Welcome everyone. Hey TL3, welcome. So today's topic, we're going to talk about are lazy employees driving you crazy? And we're going to dive deep into this, and we're going to talk about things that you can do and things that you can identify to be able to help them move forward. I'm doing great today, King. How are you? I'm from Canada. How about you, Purva? Finally, someone who knows what the show is about. Cool. TL3, great. Uh, so, understanding this concept, and this applies not only to people in the work environment, your employees in your work environment, this can also apply to your professional life. And so, if this is your first time joining me, my name is Tina. I am a happiness coach, and I help business owners deal with the emotional roller coaster that comes with running a business. And even if you have everything buttoned down on your emotions, you've mastered them because, hey, you're a business owner, right? If you've been able to do that, but you will still have to deal with the dealt with trauma that your employees may be experiencing, and emotions are part of that, and emotions will affect your business. So I help you understand those harder emotions: depression, anxiety, fear, anger, sadness, grief, all of those kind of things, and how that can affect your business and how to move through that. And I do that by having a trauma-informed change management approach. And I have done this in my corporate role in change management, in transportation and logistics. So I will give you both personal and professional examples so that you can take away something from this training so that you can apply it to your life today. You're good, thank you. You're in Canada, Alberta, Edmonton. Okay, so you're up pretty late as well. 4:21 for me. Just been doing other things and needing that transition time to get to do the training. But I always make sure that no matter what, before I get to sleep, I definitely will do a training. So, and I've been doing that every day since, December 31st? Yeah. So I haven't missed a day, so knock on wood, right? All right, so we're going to talk about lazy employee. And if you've ever experienced the frustration of trying to get somebody to do the things that you freaking hired them to do, as a manager, as a boss, as an owner of a company, it can get really frustrated. You're like, how many freaking times do I have to tell you to get this done? And they still don't do it. They've got all these excuses, and it just really starts to wear on you. And if you're trying to be a really good leader and a really good boss, you are factoring in emotional intelligence. However, it can still be frustrating because you're still not seeing the results, and I can appreciate how annoying that can be. So we're going to talk about the cycle of it. We're going to break down some of the root causes of it, and then we're also going to talk about things that you can do that will help you, and also how this is affecting you and how you doing your own inner work will help move this process along really quickly. Okay? So let's talk about the cycle. So first, we will have a behavior that happens. And so a behavior of, say, they didn't meet a deadline, and here you are again talking to them of they didn't meet a deadline, or you had to remind them of things, and if you don't remind them of things, it doesn't get done, and they've got all the reasons why as to, there we go, you can see that. They've got all the reasons why as to it's not happening, and you're just like, okay, you're testing my patience, donut. So you have the behavior. So that brings up an emotional trigger within us, right? And we get frustrated, we get annoyed, and we're trying to stay calm, and we're trying to do all of these things. And so we've got this emotional trigger that's happened within us, and we're finding ourselves having to manage our own emotions. And the problem is we start to assign a meaning to this behavior that's happened based on our emotions. Now, there's a few things that will factor into this. We're going to have our own past experiences. So maybe in the past, when you've either had another employee, or you've seen this happen before, where maybe it's the same one, maybe it's a different one, but it's like, oh, here we go. You know, I've seen this story, I've seen this movie before, and I know what's going to happen. It's like, we're going to always have to remind them, and they'll get better for a little while, and then they'll fall back. And so we have our own past experiences that we factor into assigning the meaning, and they have their past experiences that they assign meaning to it as well. It's like, oh, I messed up again. Oh, now they're mad. Oh, I can't ever do anything right. Maybe they have different things that are going on. Maybe that's from their past as well, right? And that could be a past work environment. They're reacting to something, or they're expecting some sort of behavior from you, right? So this is always a two-way street, and it's not one-sided, even though it feels like a lot of times we're taking on the majority of the emotional workload. So their past experience, their past behavior. So we could be having a judgment or assigning a meaning on it based on their past behavior. Because usually if it's the first time, we give a little bit of grace, you know, and we give a bit of understanding. But if this is the 10th time, the 20th time, the 50th time, the 100th time, maybe they've been with the company for a while, right? But they fall back into these patterns, and it can be frustrating and annoying, right? And you get tired sometimes of having to tell people, having to remind people. So there can also be other factors that go into that assigned meaning. Hey, Robert, good to see you. So you could have other factors that could go into the assigned meaning. You could have external influences, maybe other departments or your boss or your customers are putting pressure on you by they've assigned their own meanings to it. Even if you are able to work it out with your employee, you're able to understand, but now you have external pressure that's assigning additional meanings to this, and it could also go back and forth here with the emotional triggers, okay? So that could put more pressure onto you of like, oh shit, now people aren't seeing me as a good leader because I can't get this person to do what I need them to do. And so some frustrations can come up for us, right? And so we're always basing it on various data that we've had from past experiences. And unfortunately, there's like no spreadsheets, there's no data collection, there's no KPIs that we can kind of measure this easily, right? And so this becomes something that can be really challenging to understand. But know that whatever meanings we are assigning to that, that's going to create a belief about the situation, about the behavior, and then it is going to create another behavior based on the belief, right? So we keep having this cycle that goes along, and we can choose to break that cycle at any point by being able to address these things. So the way that and I want to talk about a concept of, I call this tanking. So if we've got, let's see, there they are. All right, so TikTok can see it. One of these days I'm going to get these cameras sorted out. So in the meantime, these are going to be great blooper reels to look back on of all the stuff I've done wrong. So you are frustrated. They didn't do the thing that they were supposed to do. And you're like, damn it, they're lazy. Why can't I get them to do it, right? And they're over here going, uh-oh, they're mad. So the concept of tanking is usually if somebody is being resistant, they are not doing some of the things that they're supposed to do. They've got some underlying anger issues that are happening here. Anger or fear, one of the two. Okay, well, and technically if you've listened to me long enough, you will know what I think about anger and fear, and we'll touch on that in a minute. I'm just going to go through this concept first. So if they have a lot of repressed anger, they're going to push that down, it's going to come up, and this person will express the anger. Now, we might have a lot of fear, right? Fear, if I can't get them to do this thing, it's going to, I'm going to end up having to let them go, and maybe I like them, maybe they're really nice, maybe, you know, it's going to look bad on me as a leader, as an owner, that I can't, you know, get these people, I can't lead these people, they won't listen to me, what's going on, right? So then we have a lot of repressed fear because you can't show that as a leader, and that ends up being expressed by our employees. So we have this tanking situation where whatever emotions we are suppressing is being pushed out and they are expressing. And same thing with us. Whatever emotions they are repressing, we end up expressing. So know that this is always a two-way street, and being able to identify what's going on, we can change the dynamic by doing our own inner work and really breaking down what is the story that we're assigning. So if we are angry and frustrated, so I've talked about the 4 stages of fear. We have fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And these all have certain energy levels, right? So fight is obviously you're angry, you're, you know, pretty simple solution is a boss fire them. Yeah, you can do that. You can absolutely do that and cut to the chase. That's 100% up to you. But if you don't learn the lesson from it, it will repeat. So you could end up bringing on the next person, and now the problem's still there, it's still happening, and we haven't solved it, and here we are again with the same issue. And I know there's been many times in business I've seen this happen. You bring on the next person and the same issue. And there's nothing worse than finding out that if you had just made one little change, if you had done a little bit of the emotional work, then you would have been able to not only save that employee, you would have been able to help them grow, you would have grown, and this problem wouldn't have repeated. So now, sometimes the solution is firing them. But there's a process to that, right? Okay, so we have fight. So this is a limited energy, right? So you have limited energy here, and it kind of goes down this way. So you can only stay in this energy, the fight, for so long. And then the flight happens, freeze, and then fawn, right? So you have to understand these stages of fear, because even if you can manage your own emotions very well, maybe your employees aren't. And as a leader, as a business owner, we want to be able to set that example. And we do that by going first. We do our own inner work. What solution makes me more money? Exactly. If you keep having turnover, what's the cost of that, Bob? What's your cost to fire an employee, hire a new one, train them up, and that problem happens again? What's your cost? Most business owners can't answer that because it's not an easy KPI. So you often end up, out of your own fear, because you don't know how to solve the problem correctly, you end up defaulting to the quickest solution, which may not be the correct solution. Yes, it gets you short-term results, but it will require you to repeat those efforts over and over and over again, and you get stuck in a loop. I've seen these things happen many times. But if that process is working for you, Bob, go ahead, keep doing that, and then you won't have any issue. But if it is a problem and you're finding yourself in this situation over and over and over again where you're frustrated because your employees are lazy and they aren't living up to your expectations, they're not following through, and you're having to step in all the time, what's the cost of that? Okay, what's the cost of your time having to do this over and over? Okay, so being able to understand and help your employees become happier by understanding this process is going to help you with being able to identify what's going on. So now, in understanding some of the emotions, when we do our own internal work, what ends up happening is we start to see our own fear. So if we see that anger is the first stage of fear, we have to start asking ourselves, as soon as we're angry, because that's the first stage, you can flip this and get back to the better feelings, the feelings more open, loving, productive, all of that kind of stuff. Think of your happiest day when all of your employees, they're really happy, they're really productive, they're doing the right thing, you guys are winning. That's all good, happy feelings. Those are all like love feelings, right? Because there's fear and there's love, and fear is an illusion. It's not real. So as soon as we hit that first stage of fear, which is anger, we have to start asking ourselves, not focusing on, I'm so pissed off about this. It's like, what is it that I am actually afraid of? And when we start digging into those kind of things, it's like, well, I'm afraid that they're not going to do the stuff, and maybe there's going to be consequences in the business that is going to happen. Or maybe it's like, I'm afraid that I'm going to end up having to fire them, and then I have to go through this process of hiring another person and training them up, and what if they don't work out? And they had good skills, otherwise you wouldn't have hired them, but now there's some problems, right? So being able to work through the problem is much more beneficial than it is to just cut your losses. Yes, you can do that, but there's still cost to that. And oftentimes the problem with that pathway is you don't know the cost until after it's too late. So being able to be aware, and when you think of bringing on any person, you want to bring on the best people and that they have good intentions, and you can run into challenges. And so when we take ownership ourselves of the process of what's going on and understanding where the fear is coming from, when we remove our own fear, then we stop tanking them, that they don't have to be afraid all the time. And then maybe they can express whatever thing, because remember I was talking about repressed anger, right? So if they've been angry about something and they don't feel like they can talk about it, they don't feel like they can bring it up, they're going to repress those feelings. That repression also is kind of like a depression, and that prevents people from doing the things that they know that they need to do because they can't talk about that anger. So that could be contributing to the laziness, okay? So if maybe the reason they're resistant is they don't agree with it, but they don't feel like they have the ability to speak up or offer a different solution because we're so adamant about this is the way that it has to be done, right? Whatever the issue is, taking the time to remove our own fear around the situation allows us to be calmer, allows us to be stronger, allows us to be able to start asking questions and start seeking to understand versus making the assumptions and just hammering home that this is the way it needs to be done. Maybe they have a better way, but they don't feel like they can speak up because they're too afraid. So when we remove our own fear, we can also start to create that safer space so that they can speak about what the situation is. And when they have clarity, and when they feel heard and understood, then they will move forward with the things that they know that they need to do, because everybody comes in wanting to do a good job. They may fall short. Now, it also may bring up some other issues, whether it's a past work environment where they were treated negatively and they assume that that is going to happen again. Remember, I talked about they've assigned meanings, right? So if they see an emotional trigger, or they screwed something up, they had the behavior, they didn't get the deadline, but maybe that was because they were too afraid to speak up, saying that they would need more time. So they didn't want to say something. So we assume all of these things, we start adding these labels onto people rather than truly seeking to understand what is going on behind the scenes and truly getting to the root of the problem, because when we do that, it eliminates it. So it's more work on the front end, but it is a much bigger return. We have to look at our employees like they are an investment, and they are worth the investment. Otherwise, why did you hire them, right? And when they feel like they are an investment that you want to grow and you want to see a return on it, and you're going to pour in, and at first you're not going to see a whole lot of return on the energy or your money that you're putting in to this employee, but if they see over the long term that you can be consistent, that you have set the example, that you have shown them the way, they will follow suit, because they're like, oh, this company isn't out to punish me, they are actually helping me. And now I can see that the previous companies that I've worked for were actually really terrible, and I'm going to stick around with this company no matter what, because they have really helped me change, they have really helped me grow, they have really poured into me. And that's when you start getting that return. Now, that may take a while, and it's up to you to decide whether or not that's a good investment or it's not a good investment. And so if you want to play it like it's a slot machine, and it's like just keep putting in coins and hoping for the best, then you can do it that way as well. And sometimes you might get lucky and hit the jackpot, and other times you more than likely the house is going to win, right? So you want to be able to look at your employees and treat your employees like an investment, because they are the biggest investment in your company, and you want to be able to grow them as much as possible. Now, if it's a bad investment that you've made, then you do want to cut your losses, and getting to the point of being able to accept it, because maybe some of the anger that we feel is the fear of, like, I'm going to have to let them go, right? It's not a good fit. It might be something that you're like, man, here we go again, and we're having such a hard time filling this role. But being able to come to terms with that, being able to come to accept that worst case scenario is alone going to diffuse it. So, and how we communicate to that, it's like, hey, you know what, Joe, I'm really concerned here because these things aren't changing. We've talked about these, and I'm afraid that if it continues on, that I am not going to be able to protect you. I'm not going to be able to save you from the situation here, right? And I need your help at how can we fix this, right? So it's a much different conversation versus hammering doing, going, oh my God, they're so lazy. Why are they not doing this stuff? And you know what? You might end up doing them a favor of letting them go, because maybe they're too afraid to be able to say, I don't want to do this. This isn't a good fit for me. But because I had an employee one time, oh man, she was a lot of work. She was a lot of work. And she took the role because her parents wanted her to be working in an office and, wearing, suits to work, like, she always wore a blouse and a blazer and a skirt and high heels, and she, dressed the part of being the businesswoman, right? And she felt that that would make her parents proud, that she's got this office job and she's doing really well and all this kind of stuff. For her, that was a big deal. But she didn't like it. She did not like it, and she was not good at it, and it was really confusing. And she was a really, really sweet person, and it was challenging because I could see it really broke her heart that she really wanted to do well at this, but she also didn't like it, but she could not admit that to herself. She could not admit that to us, obviously, but she would talk about how important this was for her parents, right? So there's all kinds of emotional stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And for her, in this case, unfortunately, she had a back-to-back tragedy. Her one parent, I can't remember if it was her mom or dad, that passed away first. And then within a month, her second parent passed away. And so she was devastated by this, and she ended up leaving afterwards. But I think it was a bittersweet kind of thing where she now no longer had the pressure from her parents of having to do this job that she didn't like. And she was able to move on and do something different. So while it's challenging for us, but we have to address all of our own fears on our side of maybe letting that person go. Maybe we have to address the fear of like, damn, I really wasn't able to help this person, and you maybe are questioning your leadership skills. Maybe you're questioning, hey, did we do enough, right? You have to address all of those fears within ourselves. When we can come to terms with our own fears, then, and we can answer the questions that we are worried about, we won't be reacting in anger. We will be able to view this through a lens of kindness and compassion and caring. And that's a very different energy. So that even if you do let somebody go, don't do it out of anger, don't do it out of frustration, but do it out of love as a release. That it's like, hey, you know what? This isn't going to work, and if you stay in this environment, it's just going to be constant friction and back and forth fighting, and I don't want that for you. I actually am going to release you in love, right? So that is not like, maybe you're going to use different words in a business environment, but that's okay. But it's the whole same concept, right? That even as an employee, when I've left a company, I don't leave out of spite. I leave because it's out of love for myself to do the best, to move to a different environment that would be better for me, that would allow me to grow. And it's not because I hate the company, it's not because I hate the people. No, even if those frictions came up in that environment, that doesn't mean I hate them, okay? It means that it's not a good fit and it's time to move on, and or that whatever lessons that we had to teach each other, we've learned them and it's time to separate. Now that sucks, but at the same time, it's also freeing because that frees up. I'm not doing it out of spite. I'm leaving so that it frees up the role for somebody else to step into that, for somebody else to grow into that, right? For them to bring their expertise, and I can take my expertise and go someplace else. So it's not always a bad thing to have this kind of stuff happen. So even if there is separation, it doesn't mean it's terrible. It's the way we handle it that matters most, right? It's through making sure that we're not doing things out of a fear state, out of an angry, reactive state. We want to do this out of love for ourselves and love for the people around us, right? Because if I'm in a job that I'm not happy at, I'm not going to perform the best. I am not going to be my best self. And if I am a leader or I'm a business owner and I have an employee that they're not performing at their best, and I've tried everything that I can possibly try to help them and coach them and guide them and bring them up to speed to get them where they need to be, and they're still not performing, then it is actually a blessing. It's an act of love for myself so that I don't have that constant frustration, and it's an act of love for them to release them, right? To allow them the opportunity, or maybe you can try to find something within or something that's better suited for them. But I also want to be cautious of not just transferring the problem from one department to the next, right? I've seen that happen in companies far too often as well. It's like, oh, I can't stand them in the, in the office here. Let's ship them out to the warehouse and see if they do better out there. Oh no, they're not doing there. Maybe if we put them out in this role, they'll do better, right? And so you've seen sometimes where companies will shift it around rather than actually addressing the problem. So that's the soft way of just cutting their losses and, firing them. So these things are important to be able to learn and understand. And yes, it is longer on the front end, but how many people do you want to go through before you figure out what the challenge is? Maybe it is the person. Maybe it is the person. If that's the case, you want to look, it's like, was the person always that way? Or did something change of how they were doing things? Did they come in really good? Hey, long gone. Did they come in really good and then started to go downhill? What happened? You really need to do a root cause analysis on where the problem was so that you can mitigate that and prevent that from happening again. Did they come in, did we not do enough screening in the hiring process? And they came in and you had to go through all of this stuff only to end up having to let them go. So where was the challenge, right? So either way, it's all about taking on the ownership of it and understanding our part of it, how we got into this. Because if we're just focusing on the systems and processes, that's the easy part of business, right? That is logical. It's yes or no. It's very binary, right? And we fix that problem and there's no fear, and it's just, okay, now we implement this and this is what we follow. It's when the emotions get into the situation that we get stuck and we end up being in denial most of the time because we're not looking at the emotional side. We just kind of keep hammering the process, not realizing it's the emotions that need to be dealt with so that the process can be followed. Does that make sense? Hey, Longan. Yes, I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you? So, guys, that's going to be the training for today. How to deal with the lazy employees and being aware of this situation of tanking, right? If they've got repressed anger and you are the one expressing it, that you're angry all the time, if you have repressed fear, because, as leaders, we don't typically walk around going, shit, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this, right? You tend to hide that. So you're repressing your feelings at some time. So when we stop repressing our fear, and it'll stop tanking them, right? Where they're always expressing fear, and fear is that resistance, right? That is the freeze and fawn, right? Where they're not doing anything. They're seeming to be lazy. So they've been in fear for a while. So that is another factor that I didn't really touch on. So being able to understand those things is really important. Probably more work, long gone. I work 7 days a week, but that's okay. I enjoy it, so that's good. But yeah. So this is my work. This is part of my work. This is some of it. There's other things that I do in the background. Some of it is also this lovely art. Over here. There you go. So I create artwork as well. So guys, that is the training for today. Thank you. And if you want to watch the replay, go to my YouTube channel and click on subscribe. It's Coach Tina B 125. Make sure you click on subscribe. You'll get notified when I've uploaded the replay. If you want to go back, take notes, pick apart, critique, leave a comment telling me why I'm wrong, whatever works for you. Telling me why I'm right, or what you liked, or what you didn't like. Are you getting, let's see, sorry, I missed the comments here. Oh, it's pronounced long one, is it? Oh, okay. Haha. That's all debatable. All right, guys, so that is the training for today. So hopefully this was helpful, and you can come back again tomorrow. Bye.